Hey, so here's an exercise for you before we continue on with the rest of the lectures. For this exercise, I want you to create a text file and then add some integer values in the file. You can begin with 2 integers, for example, so then you want to extract those integers from the file, sum those integers, and then insert the sum of those integers into an output file. In this example, I actually have 5 integer values in a file that I named integers.txt. So when you get to a point where you can sum 2 integers from the input file and then put that sum out to an output file, then you can take it one step further. I will build and run to demonstrate. This program prompts the user to enter the number of integers in the file that they would like to sum. So it will sum the first so many integers from the file and then print the sum out to an output file. Of course, you may want to print that sum out to the console if you want as well for debugging purposes. I will enter 3 here and press enter. Close off the program by pressing enter again. Open the project folder. Notice that I have this out.txt file. This is the file that I have to store the sum. Currently, the value that it contains is 11, which is the first 3 values in our integers file. Now what will happen if I enter a value that is greater than the number of values that we have in the integers file here? Well, let's build and run. I will enter something like 12. Remember that we only have 5 values in the integers file currently. Press enter. If we inspect our out.txt file now, it contains 20, which is the correct value. In the case where the user enters a value that is greater than the number of integers in your file, it should only sum the values that are actually in the file. We don't want to put out a strange value to our output file. So attempt to write this program, take it step by step and see how far you get without looking at the solution. So let's look at a possible solution for this. I have the integers file set up as I showed you before. Then in the main source file, I make sure to include the fstream file since I want to instantiate the ifstream and ofstream classes. Next, the user is prompted to enter the number of integers in the file that they would like to sum. So the first so many values in the file will be summed. The number entered is stored in a variable. We declare an ifstream object and open it, specifying the name of the file, in this case integers.txt. We check if the file is open. For the next section, I have 2 variables, some temporary input integer for the input and an accumulator which I named sum. For each of the numbers to sum, extract one number from the input stream and save that in the temp integer. Then we add that value to the sum variable. Remember, the number of integers to sum is entered by the user. So again, we extract from the file stream and then we add the extracted value to the sum. To test, let's begin by printing the result to the console and close the file. Build and run to test. I will enter a value such as 2, and that will extract the first 2 numbers, sum those and print out the value 7. If we navigate to the integers text file, remember that these are the values that we have in the file, so we can verify the output by adding those values together, and 7 is correct in this case. Remember that these values in this file will add up to 20. Build and run again and let's sum all 5 values, and as we can see, that gives us 20. Now what happens if the user enters a value such as 55, for example? We don't get 20 in this case. You may want to take a second to think about why this is. Right, the reason why sum doesn't give us the value that we expect, it sort of keeps growing, is that temp will be added to the sum with each iteration of the for loop. The final value in the file is 3, so each time the for loop executes, the value 3 is added to sum. To fix this issue, let's wrap the statement where we add to sum in an if statement. Snippet, surround with, and select if. Now I will use the input for the check like so. Build and run. This works fine with an existing number of integers. If we try again, when the user enters a number of integers that is greater than what we have in the file, then we still get all of the values in our file summed. Now there is an inefficiency here. I'd like you to think about what that is for a bit. We will come back and fix that later in the video. Moving on, we have an input file stream, but we are currently printing the sum to the cout stream. This was simply for debugging purposes. Of course, we can print to the console and to a file if we want. So let's copy this code And following the for loop where we do the console output, I will paste, modify that to an output file stream object. I will rename that to something like outstream, copy that identifier, make sure to replace the instream identifier instances with outstream. We want to open a file to associate that with the output file stream, and then we want to check if that outstream is open. Modify the name of the file. I will name this something like out or sum.txt. Actually, I will reword the error string that is output to the standard error stream. Following the outstream is open check, let's insert that sum into the outstream. That will now put this accumulated value that we calculate in this for loop into our out text file. Finally, we need to close the outstream file. Build and run and enter a value such as 3 and press enter. If we inspect the file now, we get 11. Run again and enter a value such as 55. If we inspect the file, we get an expected 20 value. So the program is only going to attempt to extract and sum the integers that exist within our integers file now. As I mentioned earlier in the video, there is an inefficiency in this for loop. I will demonstrate by placing a breakpoint here, and then I will start debugging by clicking on this button here, or in the debug menu, start debugging. The shortcut, if you remember, is F5. Enter a value such as 2 and then press enter. Now we can step through our program line by line. The body of the for loop, which contains that if check, executes twice and then returns back to the main function. Following that, we construct the outstream, open the out file, and so forth. Let's restart, and this time I will enter a number such as 55. Press enter. Now if we step through the code, notice that program execution stays within the for loop for a long time. The if check fails, but the loop keeps repeating and checking the if statement each time, so this is unnecessary computation. You may want to take a second to think about how we can fix this issue. Okay, I'll stop that. Add an else part to the if check. So what will we do in the case where the if check fails? Well, we can break out of the loop, right, using a break statement. Let's debug one more time. Enter a number that is greater than the number of integers that we have in the file, and press enter. Let's step through the program again. The first 5 times the if check will succeed, since that input will be successful and a reference to the input stream will be returned. When the check fails, program execution jumps to the else part where we have the break statement. If we step into that, we break out of the for loop and continue executing the code in the main function. I will stop that. So this is how we can fix that inefficiency. Remember that we can break out of, or in other words terminate a loop, using a break statement. Remember the issue we had previously where temp would be added to sum, giving us strange values if the user entered a number that is greater than the number of the integers that we have in the file? Well, we can move this temp integer, which is used to store the extracted value, into the body of the for loop. So I will copy this and then remove the temp declaration from the scope. Paste the declaration in the body of the for loop. Now each time the body of the for loop executes, the temp variable is instantiated and is initialized to 0. If we don't step through the program, it may be easy to use only this as the solution to some of the issues that we had previously, but it would not have solved the inefficiencies that we have solved in this section. Build and run. I will enter a value such as 55 again. Remember that we only have 5 integers in our file. Navigate to the project folder and inspect the out text file. It contains 20. Let's run again. Enter a number of values that we do have in the file, such as 3. Press enter. Inspect the file again and we get 11, which is the sum of the first 3 integers in our file. That is going to wrap things up for this exercise. The exercise included some debugging, the reinforcing of previous concepts. Again, as with many of the other exercises, your solution may have looked different, and that's fine. That is it for now. I will see you next time.